After a little more than a month off, the One Main Wissota Late Model Challenge Series was ready to give it the gas. How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elson, and this is Midco Motorsports. 3 races into the 12-race schedule, 43 drivers were still in the hunt for a share of the Challenge Series point fund, which is set to divvy up over $30,000 to the top 10 finishers. Friday, many of those drivers looked to move a little closer to the cash as they made their first and only stop at Rapid Speedway. They'd share the track with all of Rocky's weekly classes, including the hobby stocks, where a frustrating season continued for Nick Brady in the 61N. Brady looked good early in this one, leading the first several laps from the pole, but he gives way to Blake Ahrens here, and it was all downhill from there. An issue with the clutch ultimately forced Brady to call it quits, giving him his 3rd straight DNF and 5th of the season. No such issues for Ahrens. He holds off both of the guys he's chasing in the points, Dylan Fitzpatrick and Dustin Gulbranson, to become the division's first 2-time winner. The night's special event was up next, 40 laps for the visiting Wissota late models. Minnesota natives had taken the first 3 Challenge Series features, and 3 more would factor into this one. Savage's Marshall Faggers had complete control early from the pole. He opened up a big lead over the first 20 circuits. The 19 forced to slow down on lap 25. The 50 of Jeff Wildung, who was closing the gap in lap traffic, clips the cone to the inside, and that brings out the caution. Just after the ensuing restart, Faggers loses the lead. He goes high, and that opens the door for Winona, Minnesota's Lance Matthews. The 90 wouldn't keep that lead for long, though. Faggers takes it back the next time around, and he'd finish it off from there. Faggers collects the win and the $2,000 payday.
That was definitely our best run of the year. It's our 5th race of the year. We've got a 6, a 7. Just been working on getting the car dialed in a little bit. We made a lot of changes over the last couple weeks and drove the 3.5 hours to get here to try it out, and paid off.
The night's B-Mod feature had a little of everything. The 98 of Nate Barger would take control early, but he runs into an issue just a few laps in. Barger spins in turn 4. Somehow nobody hits him, but it hands the lead to Thor Anderson in the 41. While Anderson started to build his lead, the 7 car of Cullen DeRuyter was charging through the field. DeRuyter started 11th, but he passes Coulter Deutsch for 2nd here, and then starts to reel in the 41. Fast forward to the final lap. DeRuyter now door-to-door with Anderson, and watch the finish. Snug, to say the least. Anderson prevails in what looked to be one of the closest finishes in Rapid Speedway history. 0.017 seconds officially, but it all goes for naught. Anderson would be disqualified during the post-race inspection for a weight violation, so DeRuyter ends up getting the win anyway. Last up were the USRA stock cars. Keep an eye on the 40 car at the top of your screen. That's Scott Overgaard, and he puts together a pretty special run here. Overgaard moves from 8th to 1st in just over a lap. He would settle into that high groove and stay there, but he'd eventually get some company. 4-time defending track champ Rich Gregoire starts to knock on the door, and the 32 finally kicks it in with about 5 to go. Gregoire caps an exciting night with his first win since May 27th.
He was heating his tires up, and I was just waiting for it to come in, and got by him laying underneath. I was afraid if I didn't stay alongside him once he seen me, he would cut down on me. So I just kind of played my cards until I had a good run on him and went by.
A number of Rockies regulars also in action Wednesday as part of Sioux Speedway's 7th annual Sprint Car Showdown. Battle for front row supremacy early in the hobby stock feature as number 2 starter Colton Ahrens dukes it out with pole setter Dustin Gulbranson. Ahrens would have the edge for the first 2 circuits, but things change on lap 3. Gulbranson decides to switch lines, and it pays off. The 6 slingshots around the 40 for the lead and never looks back. The reigning USRA national champion shows the way for the final 8 laps en route to his first career win in Sioux Center.
We've been trying to get this win for I think 5 or 6 years now, and come close a couple times and blew a few tires leading and just didn't seem to have the luck. In the first race this year, we got second by a fender, so I felt like we were finally due for one, and I guess we got it done.
The 52K of Trevor Kroc looked good in the early stages of the night's B-Mod feature, but his luck would run out after a lap 2 restart. Kroc gets a little tight in turn 3. That allows Thor Anderson to shoot past him in the 41. And the man from Rock Valley, Iowa would stay out front the rest of the way. Anderson survives a couple extra cautions to become the night's second first-time winner.
One of my most favorite things about racing is going from track to track and trying to figure it out, and if you can get a win, that's great, and that you can check it off. And I don't want to say you want to abandon that track, but you kind of get a relief and you feel a lot better about it for sure.
Stefan Siebesma's actually had a lot of success at Sioux Speedway in his career, and he found himself in a great spot again. The 5B drew the pole for the 15-lap stock car feature and creates some separation right off the start. Good racing behind him. The track's all-time winningest stock car driver, Randy Brands, in a fight with Mel Ellsbury for second. Brands has it locked down for a bit, but eventually loses his grip off a restart. Not long after that, the 27 started to fall off the pace. Mechanical issues would force Brands to the infield. None of that fazed Siebesma. He kept the pedal down and drove on for career win number 4 in Sioux Center.
I grew up racing Jackson mainly weekly, and then we went to Alta, and you just learn how to do momentum and keeping the more RPM and the speed in the car, and half miles suit me.
The first 6 sprint car races at Sioux Speedway saw 5 different winners, though just one of them was in Wednesday's field. Greg Baker won this event back in 2011, but he, along with 10 other drivers, would be racing for second in this one. Carson McCarl, the youngest son of sprint car legend Terry McCarl, looked an awful lot like his old man on this night. McCarl got a great jump from his front row starting spot and absolutely dominated from start to finish. Impressive run to his first career win in the 360 sprints.
We've had some good runs lately. We've, haven't finished out of the top 6 in about a month, and I just knew if I kept racking up those top 5s, eventually, I'd get that win, and it came tonight.
The Advantage RV Modified Tour completed its 2016 schedule over the weekend. We'll show you the highlights from their stops in Watertown and Huron after this.
This episode of Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Rapid Speedway.
The final push for the Advantage RV Modified Tour is grueling, to say the least. This year's sizzling summer finals would feature 6 races in 6 days, stretching all the way from Granite Falls, Minnesota to Miller, South Dakota. Thursday's place to race was Casino Speedway in Watertown. Casino, which also hosted the season opener, was the only 2-time stop for this year's series. The Midwest Modifieds were one of 2 support classes. Watertown's own Zach Lockway leads the field to green in the 61, and he stayed out front for the first few circuits. Lap 4, though, Lockway feeling the heat from Kevin Eder. The 40 car finds a little extra speed in that high groove and uses it to get around Lockway for the lead. That proved to be the only lead change of the night. Eder, who would later race in the A-Mod feature, starts the night with a win in the Midwest Mods.
Car's been real good last 5 or 6 nights here, and just good circumstances. Guys kind of parted ways, and we just made our way to the front and held our line, and things went well.
Good fight for first in the street stocks between the 2 of Dustin Davis and Tyler McFarland in the 19. Davis led the first 8 circuits, but McFarland finally sneaks by him at the start of lap 9. The effort wasted, though, just 3 trips later. McFarland loses control between turns 3 and 4, and that gives the lead right back to Davis. He was still out front with 2 to go, but would be unable to hang on. Jordan Tollickson gets him this time, and the 32 finishes what the 2 could not. Tollickson picks up his 5th victory of the season at Casino.
You got to definitely be patient here. It's a tight racetrack, and there's guys that'll spinning out in front of you and stuff. So you definitely got to be watching ahead and taking your time, and sometimes surviving's half the battle.
There wouldn't be nearly as much drama in the night's main event thanks to South Dakota's all-time winningest driver. Aberdeen's Kent Arment certainly lived up to the legend label on this night. He drove the 9 car into the lead from his number 2 starting spot before the end of lap 1 and absolutely blew the doors off the 26 car field. Arment cruises to his first tour win of 2016. After another win Friday at Brown County Speedway, Arment sought a third straight victory Saturday in Huron. Pick things up with those Midwest mods again. One guy always seems to be a factor at this track, and that is Adam Brotherton. The Huron native was riding a 2-race winning streak coming into the night, and he put the 14 in position again on the opening lap. It looked like Brotherton was going to cruise from there, but trouble finds him with 10 to go. The 14 gets taken into the wall hard by the 15M of Cole McLaughlin. Somehow, though, he avoids serious damage. Look at the car. No harm, no foul. Brotherton would get to stay at the front for the restart, and he picks up right where he left off. It was a little less conventional this week, but Brotherton leads all 20 laps for his third straight win.
Well, as soon as they dropped me down off the tow hook, I asked the crew guys there from Lincoln Auto Marshall and then Darwin down there down at the corner, and he's like, everything looks good. And then I drove down into turn 3 and I threw her back and forth a couple times, and my tow was all good and everything felt good, so I figured everything would probably be all right, I guess.
Moving on to those Advantage RV Modifieds. And this one again would feature a lot of local talent. Like Brotherton, Andy McDonald also won last week at Dakota State Fair Speedway. 2 laps in, the 5M trying to chase down pole setter Travis Sauer, and he gets him in turn 4. McDonald would take full control and hold on to it for quite a while, but things got a little more interesting late. With 11 to go, here comes Arment. The 9 goes high, but McDonald holds strong. Lap 25, Arment gives it one more shot, but the same line brings the same result. McDonald never gives up the lead and gets the win in his first appearance with the Tour in 2016.
We had some troubles there at the end with some fueling problems, but we got lucky and held on to it. I know Kent was pressuring us pretty hard there at the end, but
things wrapped up Sunday at Miller Central Speedway with Jeremy Nelson becoming the 10th different winner. He beats out fellow Minnesotans Matt Gilbertson and Andy Jones. Nelson, though, comes up a little short in the final standings. Mike Stearns proves you don't have to win to come out on top. The Hecla, South Dakota driver finished in the top 10 in 11 of 12 races, and that was enough. Stearns is your 2016 Advantage RV Modified Tour champion. Well, less than 24 hours after winning one of the biggest events in sprint car racing, Donnie Schatz was back racing in his home state. We'll let you know how he fared when Midco Motorsports rolls on.
This episode of Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Rapid Speedway.
Donnie Schatz was already considered sprint car racing royalty, but he strengthened his legacy that much more Saturday by capturing his 3rd Kings Royal at Eldora Speedway. Most of us would probably take a night or two off after earning a $50,000 victory, but not Schatz. Less than 24 hours later, he was racing at Red River Valley. Schatz driving one of the 24 NLRA late models that lined up for Sunday's special in West Fargo, but he, along with everyone else, would be chasing the 71 of Dustin Strand. The Grand Forks native started on the pole and jumps out to a big lead at the green flag. Points leader Brad Sang, along with the 10 of Mike Balkin, give it their best shot, but the 71 just too good. Strand coasts through lap traffic and collects his first NLRA victory of the season, while Schatz finishes 6th. Here's a quick look at the latest NLRA standings. Sang, who finished runner-up to Strand on Sunday, still on top, 40 points better than Shane Edgington. Strand is running 3rd, followed by Cole Schill and Balkin. The Nosa Sprints also on hand. Minot's Greg Nikotenko led the field to green in the 6N, and he'd build a big lead over the first 6 laps. The 82 of Dusty Zomer lurking behind. Lap 7, the Sioux Falls native works his way around Jordan Adams for the silver spot. He'd get Nikotenko with 11 to go, and it was all 82 from there. Zomer grabs the win on Buffalo Wild Wings night at the fair.
Everyone's fighting for the same line there at first, so I knew we had a pretty good car. It was just all about hitting the right marks and getting good restarts on some of those restarts, and we just patience is the biggest thing that came in the whole play of that game, and we had a really good car. I could get through 3 and 4 really hard, and 1 and 2 I could float through there pretty good too. So had the car working really nice tonight, and super happy we're standing up here in victory lane on Buffalo Wild Wings tonight.
Sunday's show at Badlands is our final stop of the week. It also marked the end to a stellar one for Dustin Gulbranson. The 6-card recorded 2 wins and a second over the previous 4 days, but he'd find the checkers again. Gulbranson shot to the lead on the start and was never seriously challenged as he collects his 3rd win at BMS.
We had a lot of cautions, and I didn't know who was back there, if any of the other lanes were getting faster or not, so I was just kind of running the middle and hoping if I seen a nose either way I could change my line, and I guess it worked.
Micro Sprints driver Shane Fick hasn't had near the success that Gulbranson has this season, but he did win last week, and the 7 looked every bit as strong this week. The only thing different was the motor. Fick and his team put a new one together ahead of Sunday's race, and they clearly did a solid job. Fick pilots the 7 to another wire-to-wire win.
We learned a lot last week, and then we just basically kind of used the same setup and everything this week, just added to it, and they're definitely going to write this one down.
No doubt about it, the most entertaining race of the night came in the 360 sprints. Last week's winner, Justin Henderson, looking to go back-to-back himself, and it looked like he was well on his way. A caution, though, brought him back to the pack with 7 to go, and that was exactly what Tim Kading needed. TK gets a great jump of the restart, diving underneath Henderson for the lead, and that was it. Kading wins for the 5th time in 7 races in the 360 sprints. Sunday's show was just part of a big weekend at Badlands. When we come back, Rod Pattison will help us recap the track's annual Hall of Fame festivities.
This episode of Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Rapid Speedway.
Well, now that we've seen what last week had to offer, it's time to take a little closer look at a few of the things that stood out. And here to help us with that after a couple of weeks off is Midco SN analyst Rod Pattison. Time for Hot Laps with Hot Rod. 3 laps the distance this week. Rod, I know you're rested and ready, so let's get to it. First up, big weekend for you and for Badlands Motor Speedway as you celebrate the Huset's Hall of Fame class of 2016. Give us a quick rundown of this year's group.
Well, this is a project that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been going out to Huset Speedway, now Badlands, since I was 3 years old. My dad worked on the 81 of Jerry Ross back in the early 70s. Dad was a flagman in the mid-70s out there, John. My mom, Rita, and I would sit up in the stands and watch the races. And I've always been a big buff and big fan of the history and nostalgia of Huset Speedway. And so for me to be part of the Hall of Fame committee for the last 16 years and 12 of those years being the chairperson, it's a real honor for me to be a part of it. We inducted Ray Bolt, Elmer, Pete the Welder Peterson, Ray Feltman Jr., Butch Hansen, and Jake Peters into the class this year. Badlands Motor Speedway, Chuck Brennan, Tom Savage Jr. just did a phenomenal job of hosting us. Really had a great time, brought back a lot of memories, and might have been a few stories shared as well.
I bet. A lot of history involved with that, as you mentioned. Always an exciting time out at the track in Brandon. Well, one guy that's probably going to end up in quite a few different Halls of Fame is Donnie Schatz. He got another big win over the weekend, capturing his 3rd Kings Royal, but his first since 2009. Now, Rod, with the month of money right around the corner, what does this win mean for Mr. Schatz, and maybe more importantly, all those other guys he's going to be racing against in August?
Well, we've talked a little bit about it here a couple weeks ago, and you had made the comments that Donnie maybe isn't having the dominant season he's had so far. So all of his family and friends that watched the program said, "Hey, Don, listen to these guys, what they're saying." Well, Donnie says, "Yeah, watch this." So he picks up the $50,000 to win at Eldora for the Kings Royal. He has 14 feature wins in the World of Outlaws class right now. Nobody else has any more than 7. And I think guys like Brad Sweet and David Gravel are within shouting distance, but to have 14 wins right now, he's really building a lot of momentum going into August, and he's got a real good chance of not only taking that World of Outlaws title later in the season, but a real good chance and the odds-on favorite to win the Knoxville Nationals again in August.
It always seems like he's got some momentum when we hit August, doesn't it? All right, well, he loves to make guys like us, me, eat my words too, I think. Well, final lap here, so let's make it count. Late models have been a big deal in parts of our viewing area for a long time, but not so much right around Sioux Falls. This area's had a little bit more experience with the late model street stock. So 2-part question here. Quickly, can you explain the difference between a late model street stock and a standard late model? And why is the emergence of the Midwest late models so important?
Well, late model street stocks are the ones that we've been really exposed to here around these parts, Huset's and in Rock Rapids, Iowa, and in Madison and Lake County Speedway. Pretty much everything is a stock deal on those cars except the rear end and the engine. So right now that is a class that's really kind of on an island, because before you could race Rock Rapids Friday, Lake County on Saturday, Houston's on Sunday. But now all they have to race is the touring series they have. It's a great series, but that's all they have to race with. As far as the late models are concerned, those things are built from the ground up. They run a 14-inch tire on the back as opposed to 8 with the street stocks, and they can really kind of intertwine between the SLMR, Wasota, the Midwest mods. All you have to do is adjust the weight on yours. For instance, if a Wasota late model wanted to run with the Midwest mods, or Midwest late models I should say, all you have to do is add 75 pounds to the car. Weight is depending on what kind of engine you run, and this gives a lot of drivers a lot of opportunities to go race at Madison, Minnesota, at Watertown, at Huron, Aberdeen, and those types of places where with the late model street stocks, you're kind of really stuck. With the late models, you can really go anywhere, and it's a great chance for people to get exposed here in the Sioux Falls area with late models. And longtime veteran race announcer and good friend Steve Wemke turned me on to the late models here a few years ago, and since then I've been hooked. That's a fun class to watch.
They are fun to watch. They could fly around those tracks like they did at Rapid Speedway last Friday night. All right, good stuff, Rod. You are officially off the Hot Laps hot seat. Thank you. Well, with that, we've reached the white flag. We'll wrap things up with a look at your Midco Motorsports calendar next.
This episode of Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Rapid Speedway.
Here's a look at where the Midco Motorsports cameras are going to be heading this weekend. Enjoy the races, everyone. We'll see you back here next week.